always a light. When we are ready to see it, there is always a light. When we are ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light in the dark. When we are ready to see it, there is always a light in the dark. When we are ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will.
There is always
a light.
There is always light.
See the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, and be climb this hill, together we will.
There is always
a light.
There is always light.
We are ready to see it. There is always a light.
There is always
Are you ready to be it? To see the light,
to be the light, to
raise
shine.
our eyes in the dark of night, and be climb this hill, together we will.
There is always
We gather to worship, our hearts alive with hope that here we will be truly seen, that here we will be welcomed into the garden of this community, where the simple and the elegant, the fluted and the frilled, the shy and the dramatic complement one another and are treasured. May we know that here, each contributes in their way to the beauty of the whole. Come, let us worship together, all genders, sexualities, politics, clappers and non-clappers, progressive or conservative. May we root ourselves in the values of this faith: compassion and courage, transcendence, justice, and transformation.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome this morning to Unitarian Universalist Church West here in frosty Brookfield, Wisconsin. Whatever moved you to be here this morning in person or virtually, thank you for being here together. Welcome. Everybody, welcome. I'm Erich, and this is one of the duties that I perform as a member of your Board of Trustees. We offer gratitude this morning for the privilege of living and gathering on territory inhabited at various times by Native peoples of the Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Menominee, and Oneida Nations, among others. While acknowledging this serves to bear witness, it's far more important to understand that the peoples of these sovereign nations are here in the present, proud and among us, and are deeply engaged in making the world better for their people and for their neighbors, which is us. We know that racism, white colonialism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other exclusionary practices perpetuate inequalities, injustice, and poverty in our society, sometimes in violent ways. Much of our work addressing this as a congregation is currently being led by our anti-racism transformation team. I recommend you join them with what they are doing. As a welcoming congregation to gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, and queer plus peoples, we must continue to address ongoing homophobia, violence, and unfair legislation targeting them. May we engage in the work of dismantling white supremacy culture in our hearts, in our community, and in our world. I'm going to ask you this morning to join me in this statement of welcome. I'll make a statement of welcome, and then we will say together, I am welcome here, if you're moved to. Whoever I am, and from wherever I come, whatever my age or gender identity, whomever I love, however I define family, I am welcome here. Whatever the color of my skin, the language my grandparents spoke, the culture that lives in my being, the abilities and disabilities I hold, I am welcome here. Whatever I believe, whatever my theology, prayer, or sacrament, even if none at all, I am welcome here. We gather here united around Unitarian Universalist principles. We are a community of communities, spiritual seekers, called to take action by our commitment to justice, united in covenant and in the spirit of love. And one more time, I am welcome here. Awesome. We are welcome here. So here's a few things to note as we settle into our time together. This is a multi-generational community. All ages are welcome here in the sanctuary. There is a worship exploration table being very well used this morning with some activities for those who are so inclined. Our nursery is open, and the service is also being shown in the community room if you need to step out for any reason. After the story for all ages, those who wish are invited to go to the religious education classes as we sing the children's recessional. If you're new here or visiting, please stop by the visitor table in the foyer if you haven't done that already for more information. If you are online with us and want more information, please email us at visitor@uucw.org. There's time for us after the service for coffee, tea, and conversation in the community room. Find a comfortable place to hang out and challenge yourself to talk to someone you've not met before. Let's build a community together. As always, there's a robust list of things going on at the church you might consider participating in, which you'll find in the announcements page of today's order of service. In the interest of time, I'm going to highlight just one of these. On Friday evening this week, there's a congregational potluck dinner and facilitated workshop to share stories of our history as a congregation. This is a part of our work this year, settling in Reverend Jill as our settled minister. It should be a fun and interesting evening. Details are on the announcements page. Lastly, I'll note that there is no joys and concerns section in today's service. So if you have a joy or concern you'd like to share, there's a space on this blue form you can fill out and drop in the offering basket or hand to an usher, or you can email directly to Reverend Jill. So with all that now shared and received, let's settle in for this time that we've set aside just to be here together. Please center yourself for worship and welcome the Spirit.
Good morning. My name is Eddie Daniel, and my pronouns are he and him. As a member of the worship ministry team, it is my privilege to be leading today's service. I am delighted to welcome back to our pulpit the Reverend Shokan Muishitzu Roshi. He also goes by his pre-ordination name, Erich Moraine. He is ordained in a Rinzai Zen lineage of Buddhism and is the affiliated community minister attached to Lake Country UU Church in Heartland. On Monday nights, you can find him at LCUUC, leading the weekly Sangha meetings there. He's been married to Tracy since 1984. They have had the privilege of living with 3 beautiful daughters in the farmhouse Tracy grew up in just outside of Sussex. Some of you may remember them. Erich and Tracy are also former members here at UUCW. Welcome, Erich. Now, please rise in body or in spirit to sing hymn number 389, Gathered Here.
When Unitarian Universalists get together to worship, we light a chalice as a symbol of our faith. The flaming chalice represents many things, including the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. If you're joining us from home, I invite you to kindle a flame of your own. The words for today's chalice lighting are by Christian Schmidt. Please join me in reading the words that are printed in your order of service. Let us wake up, not just from Sunday morning exhaustion, from the wish for a few more drowsy minutes in bed. Let us wake up to this world we live in, to its beauty and wonder, and also to its tragedy and pain. We must wake up to this reality, that not all in our world have what we do, however much or little that is. We must wake up to the idea that our wholeness, our lives, are only as complete as the lives of those around us, of those who are inextricably tied to in a great web of mutuality, of which all of us are a part. Let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm going to invite all the kids up front. We have some cushions up front. We have some pictures to go with our story. And Erich would like to speak with you just a little bit, discuss with you a couple things after the story before we head down to RE classes. So there's space right up here. While you're doing that, and if anybody else wants to come forward, please do. My name is Dave Cicero. I'm Director of Lifespan Religious Education here at UU Church West. My pronouns are he and his. I've actually known Erich for a while. My wife and I joined Lake Country UU Church almost 20 years ago, and Erich was there as a part of that. So that's when I was first introduced to Unitarian Universalism by the folks there, and I learned then that being UU was all about promoting everyday values that were already important to me, like justice, but applied with generosity and with love to help make this world a better place for everybody. So Erich today is helping us understand the connection that he has found between Buddhist values, which he'll explain a little bit, I think, and the life of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Of course, we're honoring him this weekend with a national holiday. And this month, we're exploring the practice and power of stories. So I'd better get to one right now. So I'm just going to read part of this book, this story. It's called The Story of Ruby Bridges, written by Robert Coles and illustrated by George Ford. It's the story of a little girl who was brave enough to act according to the values that Dr. King was preaching at that time. And this book was published by Scholastic Incorporated. Ruby Bridges was born in a small cabin in rural Mississippi where her daddy worked picking crops. And in 1957, the family moved to New Orleans. Every Sunday, the family went to church. Ruby's mother would explain, "We want you to start feeling close to God right from the start." Now, at that time, black children and white children went to separate schools. The black children were not receiving the same education as the white children, which wasn't fair, and which was also against the law. So a judge sent 6-year-old Ruby to first grade in the William Frantz Elementary School, which drew a large crowd of angry white people. They carried signs saying mean things that they would also yell out loud. Now, the city and state police would not help young Ruby, so the President of the United States ordered federal marshals to walk with her. The white people in the neighborhood also refused to send their first grade children to school with Ruby, so she was all alone, except for her teacher, Mrs. Henry. "Sometimes I'd look at her and wonder how she did it," said Mrs. Henry. "How she passed through those mobs and sat there all by herself, seeming so relaxed and comfortable." Ruby always said that she was doing fine. Then one morning, Mrs. Henry stood by a classroom window and saw Ruby stop. Right in front of the mob of screaming people, she seemed to be talking to them. Her lips were moving, so Mrs. Henry wondered, what could Ruby be saying? Well, the marshals tried to hurry her into the school, but Ruby wouldn't budge. When she finally went into the classroom, Mrs. Henry said that she was surprised to have seen Ruby stopping to talk to the crowd. "Oh, I wasn't talking," said Ruby. "I was praying." Well, it turns out that every morning, Ruby would stop a few blocks from school to say a prayer for the people who hated her. But that morning, she forgot until she was already among them. And when school was over, Ruby hurried through the crowd to go home as she did every day, repeating the same prayer again. And that is the end of the story. So prayer is how some people talk with God. And I wonder, what was the prayer that Ruby said each day? I'm going to suggest that you wonder, too, not only about what Ruby prayed, but what is it that you might do if you were to be put into a similar position as Ruby's? What would you say? And to whom? Now, that situation is hard to imagine, but it's not impossible. Most of us have to put up with mean people at some point in our lives. And so while you're wondering that, I will invite Erich up to say hi.
Good. So the question is, when you meet somebody and they're angry with you, or they act like they're afraid of you, right? What do you do? What happens inside of you when you see somebody who's afraid? Is there a little part inside of you that also kind of feels afraid then? Right? What if you meet somebody who's angry with you? What happens inside of you? What's the kind of automatic thing that happens? Anybody? What happens if you meet somebody who's mad at you? If I meet somebody who's mad at me, I know what happens inside of me. Part of me gets afraid, and then sometimes part of me is also a little bit angry right back, even though I don't even know why I'm angry, and I don't even know why they're angry. Right? This just seems to be part of what happens with being human, with having a human brain. So you get to make a choice, and you get to decide if you're going to react like that. Because if one person's scared and they meet somebody else who's scared, and that person is scared back again, now you've just got two scared people, right? And they're going to run away and they're going to continue to be afraid. But you have a choice about whether you want to be afraid or whether you want to ask them, what's going on? Who are you, my friend? Right? You just don't know them well enough yet to be friends with them. But eventually you might become friends. So if you just skip the being scared part and go straight ahead to being the friends part, they might not be as afraid either. And that's what Dr. Martin Luther King kind of showed us, that when we meet people that are afraid, that are angry, that are upset, we don't have to do the same thing. We can meet them with curiosity, with openness, and with this word, compassion. Compassion. Being friendly, being kind, being curious. This is not something that most of us grew up knowing how to do. I know I didn't, right? But with a little bit of practice and maybe watching grown-ups who are already good at doing this, you too can learn how to do it. Right? When someone is angry, you don't have to respond in anger. When someone's afraid, you don't have to respond in fear. Not anymore. Does that make sense? Yeah. It'd be a whole lot nicer if we could all figure out how to do that. So thanks for listening. When you get a chance, maybe later today, maybe tomorrow, maybe this week sometime, why don't you try it once? See what happens. Are you willing? Give it a try. So thanks for listening. And it's on to the next step.
Thanks so much. And this is the time when our children and youth are invited to meet with their peers in their religious education classes. I believe Olive has agreed to light our lantern. She might get some help from her brother, Everett. Yep, thank you. And they will turn on our lantern and lead us out of the sanctuary, while those going to RE would please come forward and follow them and the lantern out of the sanctuary, while the rest of you please join me in singing our recessional. As you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go.
And now, before we sing our next hymn, we have a special song for a special person who has just had a birthday. Her name is Carolou Nelson. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Carolou. Happy birthday to you. And now, please stand as you're willing and able, and sing hymn number 146, Soon the Day Will Arrive.
Good morning. I'd like to take you for a little walk with me this morning. I know it's chilly out there, but in your mind's eye, come with me. This is our meditation for this morning. This is a focused concentration practice, dharana practice. Right? The idea is to find out what's in the room, find out what's in your head, notice what's in your heart. So settle into your seat. Take a few cleansing breaths, a few settling breaths, and notice what it feels like, the chair under your butt. And notice what the floor feels like under your feet. And notice what the room sounds like that you're seated in. And notice how the air smells that you're breathing this morning. The intention here is to be aware. This is not to change anything. This is to notice what's here. There may be a sore spot in your elbow, a little bit of tightness in your neck. Allow your attention to move to that and just notice. And maybe with the next breath, you can allow your attention to relax and you can continue. Almost as if you're walking down a path in a park and you notice an animal up ahead on the trail. And you stop walking, and it stops walking. And you look at it, and it looks at you, and you have a moment together. And soon enough, it continues on. And so do you. So allow those thoughts, allow the feelings, allow the memories that you're carrying with you this morning gently to float in past your awareness, to notice, and to let go. And again, notice and let go.
Oh, the one thing we did right was the day we started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Got my hands on the freedom plow. Won't take nothing for my journey now.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Only chains that we can stand are the chains of hand in hand.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
We're gonna board that big Greyhound, carrying love from town to town.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Many good souls have fought and died, so we could sing here side by side.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
When united, it is clear we don't have to live in fear.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Building walls and spreading hate will not make this country great.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Oh, the one thing we did right was the day we started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
Thank you. Thank you. This morning's opening reading is by Dan Harris and Martin Luther King Jr. Harris says, Buddhist advice about consuming news about the wildfires without being completely overwhelmed. It starts by understanding the difference between empathy and compassion. Empathy is when you feel somebody else's feelings, when you're consuming news about the fires, especially when you're watching interviews with people who've suddenly lost everything they own. Empathy can be overwhelming. But compassion is different. Compassion is empathy plus the desire to help, even if there's nothing you can actually do to help. Simply adding on the desire to help can be empowering and ennobling and can therefore prevent overwhelm. So what to do about this practically? When I watch news coverage of all the people whose worlds have been utterly torn apart, I silently repeat this old Buddhist phrase in my head, may you be free from suffering. Simply adding on this desire to help, even when there's nothing I can actually do to help, it changes my mindset. But also, for many of us, there are things we can do to help, to put compassion into action. Donate to help the first responders. Donate to help the survivors. Call your friends in Los Angeles. Even just being more friendly and helpful to your friends and family can increase your sense of agency. Action absorbs anxiety. Bottom line, empathy can swamp, compassion can uplift, and action absorbs anxiety. In a world where climate change makes these disasters more likely, we may need compassion more than ever. Excuse me. Martin Luther King Jr. says, in a sense, every day is Judgment Day, and we, through our deeds and words, our silence and speech, are constantly writing in the book of life. Life has come into the world, and every person must decide whether they will walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of destructive selfishness. This is the judgment. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Thank you. I guess it's me again. Good morning. So before I start, I wanted to run off script just a little bit and say to those of you that are new to this congregation or maybe new to you, that what you're going to hear this morning is my opinion. These are my thoughts and words. This is not the policy or position of this congregation or of Unitarian Universalism in general. This tradition has a freedom of the pulpit, where someone who stands here is encouraged to speak their truth. And that might mean that we don't agree. So if what you hear this morning you do agree with, take it home with you. And if it's something that doesn't quite resonate for you, then keep looking. So that said, thank you. My pronouns are he and him, and I say those comfortably and easily because I stand in solidarity with those who cannot say those words comfortably or easily. And thank you for this invitation to come to your house and talk with you. It's good to be in this space, sharing this beloved community with all of you. You may have noticed tomorrow, January 20th, is a national holiday where we celebrate the life and work of a great man, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Born in 1929 at the start of the Great Depression, he grew up in depressed, segregated Atlanta, Georgia, with little to look forward to in his hometown. At age 15, he was accepted into Morehouse College and managed to leave his challenging family life behind. Over the next 15 years or so, King rose out of poverty and despair to become a Baptist minister with a PhD in philosophy and became a huge figure on the American political landscape. Which brings me to a question I ran into several years ago and the topic of today's sermon. What does a Baptist minister have to do with Zen? So as you can see, I am part of a Rinzai Zen Buddhist tradition. Junpo Kondo Roshi, the founder of this order that I'm a part of, assembled a small book of writings or sutras which describe his view of Zen and Buddhism. And one of those sutras names the guiding teachers of the lineage, people who exemplify the Buddhist values that Junpo wanted emphasized. King is named as one of those teachers, and this really rather intrigued me. What's a Baptist minister doing in a list of guiding teachers for a Zen lineage? So it turns out there is a common thread that runs between Zen and King, and interestingly, it runs through India. So let me back up a little. In the late 1800s, India was ruled by the British, who were rather harsh landlords. Mahatma Gandhi, an Indian lawyer and activist, became widely recognized for his nonviolent political protests to the British rule of India. Gandhi's attraction to the Buddhist teachings of nonviolence and compassion for all led him to create this word, satyagraha, a Sanskrit word he stitched together from satya, which means truth, and graha, which means holding firmly to a polite insistence. So satyagraha, polite insistence on holding firmly to the truth. Gandhi embraced this as the guiding principle of his anti-colonialist independence movement and taught his followers these methods of peaceful, nonviolent resistance that this phrase embodied. Ultimately, satyagraha was the vehicle by which Gandhi ended the 89-year-long iron-fisted rule of India by Britain. India became a free and democratic nation in 1947. Coincidentally, this was the same year King turned 18. A junior at Morehouse College in economically depressed, culturally segregated, politically oppressed Georgia, King watched this peaceful revolution led by Gandhi, which upended the British Empire. Pretty heady stuff for a young adult, fueled by a desire to change the world. 11 years later, King finally had the opportunity to visit India and meet Gandhi in person. And he is quoted as having said, "India is the land where the techniques of nonviolent social change were developed, which my people have used in Alabama and elsewhere throughout the American South." Interestingly enough, another future world leader also watched what was happening in India, Nelson Mandela. He eventually used those same Buddhist principles of satyagraha as developed by Gandhi in his struggle against apartheid in South Africa. Mandela's struggle lasted decades, and like Gandhi, he persisted. And in time, that polite insistence on holding firmly to the truth brought down segregation laws and ended apartheid in South Africa. King used this same tactic of non-violent, peaceful protest to engage the systematic, political, social, and economic suppression of African Americans baked into the U.S. legal system. At that time, there were many unjust laws used as weapons of oppression against non-whites. It was a long and difficult struggle. Many protesters were hurt. Many died. One of which is our very own James Reeb, a UU minister. Unfortunately, James Reeb was beaten by a mob of frightened angry white men during the march on Selma, Alabama, and he died several days later. And today, there is a UU church named in his honor in Madison. If you've never been there, it is well worth the visit. King was a remarkably strong example of the Zen ideal of non-reactive presence. He showed us firsthand what happens if you do not succumb to fear, anger, and reactivity when faced with violence and hatred. Those who marched with him did not give in to the fear they most likely felt. They adhered to the principles which King taught. And King said, "We can no longer afford to worship the God of hate or bow before the altar of retaliation. The oceans of history are made turbulent by the ever-rising tides of hate, and history is cluttered with the wreckage of nations and individuals that pursued this self-defeating path of hate." Buddhism says it, and King demonstrated it. Be present to it. Observe it, but don't react to it. Respond with compassion. King's nonviolence in the face of deadly violent police and protester action requires a very serious commitment and some serious, deep personal work to be able to do. His cultivation of internal groundedness and centeredness sometimes takes years to develop. Two good ways to get started right now are by practicing meditation and mindfulness, which are at the core of Zen. As this ground of being slowly reveals itself to you, one gradually becomes more able to respond to anger and hatred with compassion and understanding instead of staying stuck in reacting with violence. So how does this apply to us today? Well, in this morning's reading, King said, every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of destructive selfishness. This is the judgment we face. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? What are you doing for others? And that phrase is an embodied expression of the Buddhist Bodhisattva vow, to serve others and ease suffering till all are free. Bodhisattvas are those who have seen the light and found a way to free themselves of suffering, and instead of slipping into the destructive darkness of selfishness, withdrawing from the struggles of the world, a bodhisattva chooses to act as a beacon of light, to shine light on the way home for all of us still stuck, still struggling to find our way ahead in the darkness. King was often encouraged by well-meaning friends to back off, take a little more care of himself, to take it a little bit easier, maybe settle for a few of the gains, some of the changes he'd already achieved, and maybe call it quits with all that protesting stuff. He was warned more than once that he was in grave physical danger, particularly as those violent reactions to his marches became ever more intense. King's response was, no one is free till we are all free. It's almost as if he had taken the bodhisattva vow to serve and liberate them all. King presents that bodhisattva concept again in his famous I Have a Dream speech, where he mentions freedom and liberty for all, not just those with white skins. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. It was about a year after that speech in front of the Lincoln Memorial that the Civil Rights Act was passed. And another year later, the Voting Rights Act was passed. Fairness and equality under the law were now the law. Unfortunately, that much change was too much for some. And in a world newly redefined, many were frightened of the coming changes they couldn't see themselves a part of. They were unsure of their future in this new world of racial equality. And we lost King to an assassin's bullet not quite 5 years later. just like we lost Gandhi some 20 years earlier. In King's time, the big struggles were against segregation and the war in Vietnam. In our time, we also face a number of struggles. The war on the LGBTQIA community, the struggle of climate change, the fight for affordable housing and health care for all. And one of the biggest current issues, I think, might be the weaponizing of our media and the war on truth. What might we be able to do if we remember what the Buddha taught, if we use the tools that Gandhi developed, if we implement them in the way that King showed us how? Peaceful, firm insistence on the truth. I believe we can change the entrenched systems of oppression we face today. If we rally around the flag of beloved community, there is a way out of the darkness, just as there was in King's time, in Mandela's time, in Gandhi's time. Maybe this is our time. As I was doing research for this sermon, I came across that phrase, beloved community, a number of times. And it turns out the UUs didn't invent it. It seems that we may have borrowed it, possibly from King. His goal, as is our goal, is to build beloved community by practicing empathy and compassion for all, by working for justice, equality, by inviting and celebrating diversity. Maybe King was a UU as well as a Buddhist and a Baptist. And tomorrow, our federal government changes hands. How ironic that this falls on the same day we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So which celebration are you going to participate in? In some ways, the contrast between these two leaders could not be more bold. The next 4 years will be very different. For many of us, we see dark and troubled times ahead. And I hope that if we remember to ask ourselves the question that King gave us, what are you doing to help others? Perhaps we can follow in his footsteps of shining altruistic light, of spreading, instead of spreading destructive, selfish darkness. King said, if I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. Dan Harris said in the reading, if I can't go to California and fight the fires there, maybe I can fight another sort of fire, perhaps something else in need of attention, perhaps a little bit closer to home. Remember, action absorbs anxiety. If you're feeling afraid, help someone. Do something kind for someone who's within your reach. Maybe here in Wisconsin, maybe here in Brookfield, maybe even here in this building. Have you considered getting involved with Community Connections? Kelly in the church office printed up a few extra flyers, which are actually in the lobby for you, just in case you might be in need of something to absorb some anxiety. Get up. Get up. Get off the couch. We need you. Take a risk. Let yourself be seen. Join your friends in working for justice. There are endless ways to be involved. And if you can't help in California, help to build beloved community right here, right now. In a world where you can be anything you want, be kind and be involved. So in closing, if you forget everything else from this morning, remember this. Remember a peaceful, firm insistence on the truth. Remember satyagraha. Satyagraha, that simple word created by Gandhi, embodied by King, is what conquered oppressive regimes in India, in South Africa, in the American South of the 1960s, And if we are willing to make use of it again, it will work here today for us again. We will emerge victorious on the other side of this, stronger than ever. King says, we must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. So thank you for listening to me. Let's make it so.
And now again, let us rise in body or in spirit and sing hymn number 155, Circle Round for Freedom.
Stand up here. There we go. How's that sound? Okay. Our Split the Plate program is one of outreach and generosity. Each month, we give half of all undesignated offerings to a nonprofit organization to help us live our Unitarian Universalist values, pursue the goal of social justice, and serve our community. The Ability Center, January's Split the Plate partner, is a nonprofit offering a wide variety of activities for people who may or may not have physical limitations. One interesting aspect of the program is that anyone can join the basketball court or the ice rink, along with people who may be on an ice sled or a wheelchair. The mission of the Ability Center is to provide people impacted by disabilities with a daily opportunity to be fit, active, healthy, and to play. Their view is that we are all entitled to universal opportunity for health, wellness, and recreation. Their objective is to provide ways with ramps, chairs, and special equipment of various kinds to make that happen. Everyone, according to their website, is TAB, temporarily able-bodied. Your support can help make their visions a reality. There are 4 ways to donate to our Split the Plate program. One is cash in the offering basket today. You can text your donation, mail it to the church, or donate on UUCW's website. We thank you most sincerely for your support.
And now please join with us in speaking the words for the dedication of the offering, which are printed in your order of service. To the work of this community, which is to ground ourselves in love and joy, and to act for inclusion and justice, we dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings. Our closing words are by Cheryl Block. As we go forward into this frightening, exhilarating, confusing, miraculous world, may we offer our comfort to the afflicted, our love to those who are lonely, and our wish for all to be safe. Go in peace.